15 Temmuz gecesinde canlarını milletin hukuku için siper eden, dillerinde tekbir.
Just weeks after the coup attempt, people from all corners of Turkey came together in Istanbul to rally for those who were killed in the coup attempt and for democracy. In a rare show of political unity, the leaders of the ruling AK Party and opposition CHP and MHP shared the stage and a similar message.
July 15 has opened the doors of reconciliation and consensus. As of that date, we have a brand new country, we have a brand new Turkey.
Our similarities are more than our differences. We have the duty to have ownership of this heritage of our martyrs. We need to protect our country in a determined manner. We shall not be polarized.
My noble nation, rest assured that we will be united, stay united, and altogether we will become Turkey.
The leaders of the predominantly pro-Kurdish party, the HDP, were not invited, but they had also denounced the coup attempt. The then US Secretary of State John Kerry said America stood squarely on the side of Turkey's elected leadership, but he also warned the NATO ally not to take excessive measures.
And we will certainly support bringing the perpetrators of the coup to justice, but we also caution against a reach that goes well beyond that, and stress the importance of the democratic rule being upheld.
A sentiment echoed by the EU.
Our first concern in this moment is to try and facilitate or push, as you said, for a situation that is in this moment particularly worrying, to go back to normal and to order and to peace and to respect of rule of law, human rights and fundamental freedoms as soon as possible.
About a month later, Turkey reached out to the US to extradite the man it believed responsible for the coup attempt, businessman and cleric Fethullah Gulen, from his home in Pennsylvania. The US said it had not been given evidence to meet the standards for extradition.
We have no interest whatsoever in protecting anyone who has done harm to an ally. None. But we need to meet the legal standard requirement under our law.
US authorities say they still haven't been given enough evidence. The aftermath of the failed coup has also strained one of Turkey's major relationships. Almost 6 months afterwards, German Chancellor Angela Merkel visited Ankara. She expressed concerns about the sacking and suspension of people since July 15 and press freedom under the state of emergency.
Also ich habe von meiner Seite aus darauf hingewiesen, dass natürlich gerade in einer solchen Phase des tiefgreifenden politischen Umbruchs alles getan werden muss, um eben die Gewaltenteilung und vor allen Dingen auch die Meinungsfreiheit, die Vielfalt der Gesellschaft weiter gewahrt sein muss.
Turkey had expressed its own concerns about Berlin's non-response to extradition requests for people allegedly involved in the coup.
Sometimes we are hearing complaints regarding the practices. There may be mistakes when we deal with such a big incident in which hundreds of thousands of people are involved, but it is absolutely not deliberate. Turkey is a state of law. We will not act out of revenge. We will treat everyone with fairness under the rule of law.
The political unity on display in Turkey after July 15 was fractured when the AK Party and MHP backed the referendum to change the nation from a parliamentary to a presidential republic. They argued a presidential system would bring stability and security to help prevent future coup attempts, while they rallied behind the yes vote, saying it would strengthen Turkey's democracy. The CHP and HDP campaigned for no. The yes vote won by a narrow margin, but there was now a sharp political divide, and people took to the streets to voice their opposition to the result. The latest sign of the country's political discord has been the CHP's long march from Ankara to Istanbul, attracting people across the political spectrum.
Every day, Turkey is entering deeper into a dark period. We have serious losses in this democracy. Because of this, all of us have to fight together.
The party says the state's response to the coup, mass sackings and detentions under the state of emergency have gone too far. But the president, Recep Tayyip Erdogan, called it a march for terrorists and their supporters.
Şimdi bize şunu söylüyor. O hali ne zaman kaldıracaksınız? Bütün bu huzursuzluklar bittiği zaman o hali kaldıracağız. Terörle mücadelede hedefe ulaştığımız zaman o hali kaldıracağız.
A year on, the domestic and international political fallout of the failed coup continues to cast a long shadow. Natalie Pohonen, the Newsmakers.
And as Natalie mentioned, that the United States had told Turkey that so far their calls for the extradition of Fethullah Gulen have not met the legal standards for extradition. Part of the deep frustration from the Turkish state and the Turkish people is that they have sent 875 files to the United States and multiple delegations with an abundance of evidence, in their view, to show that Gulen was behind the failed coup, but the United States still hasn't extradited him. I'm going to ask my guests about that in a moment or two. But first, earlier I spoke to the former Deputy Prime Minister and current AK Party MP, Cevdet Yilmaz, who joined us from the steps of the Parliament building in Ankara. I asked him what the night of the attempted coup meant to him.
Thank you for having me. Actually, this is a very special day for us. This is the anniversary of 15 July, which is a historic event for us. And this very place, this parliament, was the center of all the things that happened in Turkey. Actually, the putschers, the coup attempters, they bombed this parliament. And this is the symbol of our national will. And all the parties, different political parties are represented in this building. So that bombing of the parliament showed that the coup attempters, they were not just attacking the incumbent government, but they were actually attacking the very nation, actually, all segments of society, all political affiliations. They were trying to actually demoralize the whole society by bombing this very symbolic building. But our parliament that night showed a heroic resistance, actually. People from different parties were in the parliament and they resisted to the bombs and to this heinous attacks by the coup attempters. And that night was historic not only for Turkey but also for this parliament. And this is a veteran parliament now. In our independence war, this parliament was leading the world against the foreign enemies. But in that specific occasion, it became again a second time a veteran parliament, this time leading our democratic resistance to the coup attempters, to the FETÖ terrorist organization.
As you mentioned, there was tremendous unity across the political spectrum that night and in the days and weeks afterwards. We saw the entire country come together, whether people supported the AKP or not. They were all against the coup plotters and they were all united as a nation. 1 year on, when we look at the country and we see, for example, last week we saw a massive rally in Istanbul after that march from Ankara led by the opposition. There were at least 100,000 people. Depending on who you ask, it could have been many more. Does that suggest a healthy democracy, or does it show you that maybe Turkey politically is more divided 1 year on?
Actually, I see it as a healthy sign of democratic maturity in Turkey. Despite all these extraordinary events that we went through, despite all this trauma and all these difficulties we faced after this coup attempt, trying to actually do certain reforms and trying to actually reorganize our institutions so that we will not face similar events in the future. It is not easy. And Turkey is a democracy actually, and the very same, the event, the main opposition party's march to Istanbul took more than 20 days, almost 25 days. But during all this march, the government actually took all necessary measures to provide safety to them, to actually eliminate some provocative events. And that was successful. Actually, I congratulate our security forces and all those contributing to the safety of this march. And that showed actually that even the most actually strong criticisms and oppositions in Turkey are somehow tolerated. What is not tolerable in our circumstance and in all democratic nations is terrorism, acts of violence. Otherwise, Turkey is open to all kinds of oppositions actually. And we went through very important lively discussions in recent referenda as well. I mean, in the 16th of April, different parties supported different ideas, and we have actually see a yes vote with a small margin. And that shows that some international actually perceptions that there is, lack of democracy or plurality in Turkey is not founded actually. It is unfounded. Turkey is going through difficult times, but despite these difficult conditions, we value democracy very much because the whole meaning of 15th of July was defending democracy, defending elected parliament and government against anti-democratic forces, terrorist organizations. So we may have our differences among different parties. In every democracy you see discussions, debates, and sometimes very harsh criticisms among political factions. But what is important is to unite against, anti-democratic and anti-political forces. And Turkey, in that sense, showed a very important, progress. And when you look at the past, in the past, Turkey also experienced certain coup attempts and some successful coup d'etat. But in historic events, we couldn't have this unity between different parties and different sections of society. This time around, Turkey has shown this maturity, and I believe this maturity will strengthen our democratic perspective in the future.
Is it possible to continue to strengthen the democratic maturity in the country, to keep a healthy, vibrant democracy, to grow the political space, to grow the economy, to continue to let the nation thrive, while at the same time doing all of this under a state of emergency where thousands are arrested and losing their job? Can the two really be done together, or does the state of emergency need to end sometime soon?
Of course, state of emergency, as its name implies, is an emergency situation. It is not a normal situation. But we know that in democratic countries, if there is a need, you can recourse to such measures within constitutional framework, of course, and within general democratic standards. So state of emergency is not against democracy or against rule of law. It is within, when you look at the UN Charter, when you look at European Union standards, it is within these limits. So Turkey is using this state of emergency to struggle more effectively against terrorist organizations and to actually eliminate some terrorist factions within some important strategic state institutions. So this is a must for Turkey, not an option. When you look at France, for example, they have seen a single event, terrorist event in Paris, and they have used this state of emergency for a very long time. In our case, we went through a very big event actually. That's what a coup attempt. And it is not easy to actually tackle with this threat in normal conditions. So the state of emergency is not affecting daily life of ordinary people in Turkey. It is basically a tool for effective struggle against terrorist organizations like FETÖ, like PKK, like ISIS. So Turkey is trying to use this legal structure which is within democratic limits to eliminate these threats and to provide more security to its people and defend its national security. That is it. And when the need is no longer there, of course, this state of emergency will be lifted and we will return to normalcy. And that is, of course, our aim. And Turkey will continue its democratization because as AK Party, in our experience, we have seen that democratization and economic development go hand in hand. This is our experience in the 15 years. So we are very well aware of the fact that democracy and development go hand in hand, and that will not be any different in the future.
Former Deputy Prime Minister and current Member of Parliament, Cevdet Yilmaz. Sir, it's been great to talk to you. Thank you very much for taking the time.